Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
This is the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez.
Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, Kyle Nash with you here. We've also got Bryson Turner hanging out with us today on what is a busy show. We got a little bit of everything. Some big stories, some interesting, not so big stories. We're going to talk about football. We didn't get the chance to talk about Darin Hinshaw because we kind of split it, the shows up, so we'll analyze that in segment number 2. We will talk about some breaking news out of women's soccer. A UCF player getting drafted and staying home. We'll tell you who and when and where. And a couple other things that we wanted to talk about too. But first, we got to talk about that basketball game last night. Make sure you follow us at UCF Banneret _SBN. Facebook.com/Black Gold Banneret. We're also on Instagram and YouTube. What can you say? If you were there, man, you experienced one of the great UCF basketball games, certainly in the program's time in the American, certainly this, I would argue this century, probably at least. The UCF and Memphis, Penny Hardaway, of course, coming back into town. The game goes to double overtime, and UCF pulls it out 107-104 in a game that had pretty much everything. The Knights advanced to 13-4, 4-1 in the American. Ithiel Horton led the way with 30 points. He made 5 threes. He in 45 minutes. CJ Kelly, who at times was running on fumes out there, 21 points. In 37 minutes, 12 of 13 at the line. This game just, it was just a slugfest between two high-level teams playing, on high-level nights. And here's the thing that I think was amazing about this game. And Kyle, we're going to start with you here. So UCF gets word before the game. First of all, we know C.J. Walker's out for the year.
Right.
Darius Johnson's out. We know that. Then they get word before the game, Michael Durr has a broken hand. He's going to be gone for a while. So you're without those 3 guys. Arguably, could argue 3 of your top 4 guys coming into the season. Then, on top of it, during this wild game, you're starting Jalen Young at point guard. He fouls out. Your most talented player on the roster, Taylor Hendricks, fouls out with 12 points in 37 minutes. And they still find a way to beat Memphis in double OT. Came back from blew a 13-point lead, came back from down 14, and still figured this out. I just sometimes there's a game that happens where you're just at a loss for words, and for me, this was one of them. But what did you think?
Man, listen, this I wasn't there for this one. Bryson was and Nick was, but for me, like I would imagine that I would have felt similar as I did to the Michigan game last year, were I in the building. But by the way, I'm sure UCF fans, among that list of adversities that you put out there, Jeff, they would also add the officiating to that list. But, we won't do that in an official capacity, but I'm sure the fans would. I'll put it that way. But listen, while that all is surprising, listen, I don't know how many games the Hot Tune's going to start this year, but here's what I do know. This is the proof in the pudding of what Johnny Dawkins was talking about when he said he had the deepest front court since that group that had Taco Fall and all of those guys. That was made proof in the pudding here tonight with that. Over and above, you're talking about the excellent shooting display. Here's where the anomalies continue, by the way, if you're a stat guy. 16 of 35 from three. So what you're telling me is they made basically half their three-pointers shooting it from the line, from the arc, I should say, over 30 times.
By the way, tied a school record. Most three-pointers made in a game was 16.
Right, and I think
I'm sorry, and Kyle, forgive me, and 33 of 37 at the free throw line.
Right. I mean, yeah, CJ Kelly, 12 of 13 by himself. And you mentioned Horton, nine free throw points, as well as Suggs with 7. Suggs is the unspoken guy too, as well. We don't talk enough about him, but he started here in a situation where he normally isn't in the starting lineup. But this is what we're talking about with a positionless basketball situation. That's right. Just to the extent that their 7-footer Michael Durr is out, and it just didn't matter. They still got the win. Now, maybe their rebounding numbers would have been better. 41 in a triple overtime game isn't great, but okay. I'm nitpicking at that point, right, fellas? 6 blocks. That's an insane stat. Granted, 2 of them were by Taylor Hendricks, and the guards had 2 themselves from Ithiel Horton and CJ Kelly. But nonetheless, this is what we were talking about with the versatility of this group. This is what CJ Kelly was talking about in himself as an oversized guard. He's expected to do a little extra. 7 assists with a block and also 5 rebounds on his own. That's a lot for a guard. Listen, CJ Kelly's been having 5-6 rebound games throughout the season. This is a thing that's happening,
He's like a stretch one at least, and so I mean, they were dragging him off the floor at the end of this game, and 2 Memphis guys were actually I saw at least 2 Memphis players being carried off the floor by their army of about 20 assistant coaches last night. I've never seen so many assistants and staff members on a team in my entire life. But Eric, I want to go to you here. Kendrick Davis for Memphis. He was one of the 2 guys who was getting dragged off the floor. 46 minutes, 10 of 23 from the field, 21 of 23 from the line, 42 points for Memphis. And yet he still wasn't enough. He even had it down to the game ending shot. Didn't go in. And I thought that the guy who down the stretch, as Kyle alluded to, who did the best job for UCF defensively was Brandon Suggs. Yeah, he finished with 17 points and 6 rebounds on the night, 4 of 10 shooting, 7 of 7 at the line was Brandon. But when they went to, when Petty went ISO with Davis at the top, which was, basically every possession, especially down the stretch, and Suggs met him up top, it was lockdown, man. And Kendrick won a few of those battles. Brandon won a few of those battles. But the thing is, I think he wore him out. He made him work for every bucket, and it showed down the stretch because Memphis, I thought UCF would be the tired team, and Lord knows, I mean, it's not like they weren't tired because the rotation was so short.
Right.
But man, I thought Memphis, in that second overtime, they ran out of gas, Eric.
Well, part of that's because Penny didn't substitute, and Johnny had no choice. He had to substitute because Taylor Hendricks and Young both fouled out at the end of regulation. So you got guys like P.J. Edwards.
Yeah, P.J. Edwards, wow.
Who only played 37 minutes all year, scored only 4 points all year, scores 8 in the first 2 overtimes, fresh body.
And he had a couple key threes, too, Eric.
Right. And they were looking for him, and they were confident. That's the difference between this team and I think the last couple of teams is, and Kyle, you and I have talked about this in previous episodes and when we've been hanging out, this team has different ways of scoring. Whereas the last couple of years, you knew it was basically if these 2 guys or 3 guys don't score, they're done. This team has a lot of different ways of finding ways to score, and this was Coach Dawkins' best game, head coaching wise. This was a masterpiece. He made a subtle adjustment that nobody brought up. He moved CJ Kelly back to the bench and put in Suggs in the lineup for matchup purposes, also to help Kelly, to help Young run the offense as kind of a de facto point guard. So when Young needed a breather, he can bring in Kelly. So he made some subtle moves there. But the guys on the bench, they outscored Memphis 39-27. Think about it. You just outscored Memphis, who's the basketball school, 39-27, and you were the shorthanded team.
Yeah.
So I think that was a factor. Look, Kendrick Davis is one of the 5 best point guards in the country, arguably the best player in the league. I mean, he
was unstoppable last night. It was really a performance.
Well, and you mentioned the ISO. That was what Penny ran it with the Magic with Brian Hill post Shaq. That was the post when Shaq would be injured, for all you longtime Magic fans, back when they actually had a professional basketball team in town.
Oh, you mean Red Geiger? Yeah, that.
Yeah, Ronnie Cycling. That was their offense, was Penny running ISO when he was in his prime and his peak. So it wasn't, I mean, when Kendrick was doing reminded me a lot of what Penny did. So it didn't surprise me the style of the offense they were running. And obviously the officials were big fans of Kendrick Davis on that night as well, by sending him to the line every time if you blew wind on him. But UCF overcame all that, and that's the big thing is this team didn't blink. They were down 14 with 16 to go in regulation. They were blitzed 16-0 in the start of the second half. Memphis gave them a haymaker. I think UCF teams in the last few years would have just, that's it. Done. We're done. That thing turns into a 20, 30-point game. But this UCF team hasn't flinched all year long, and that's part of their characteristic and DNA.
Yeah, they just withstood the charge. It was really something to see them work back into the game. Bryson, go ahead. You were there. I thought here's the other thing that I'd like you to speak on, because best crowd, I thought in terms of noise, the best crowd of the year so far. The students are back, right? So I think that was key. The student section was packed. The official attendance was 6,800, but man, was it loud. And it certainly, I thought, affected the game, especially in the second half and the 2 overtime periods.
To quote the commercial appeal, it was a quote unquote small but fervent crowd, which I love the salt on that. But yes, the atmosphere in Edition Arena was absolutely electric. They were there were some points where felt like they were bringing the roof off the place. There were some points I told Nick Porcelli, who was sitting next to me, I was saying like the cheers seemed to be a little soft, muted in the second overtime. And I'm thinking like, I think they're tired because they've been cheering for so long. It was such an amazing. Kendrick Davis, 1 point off from scoring the most points in an AAC game in conference history. You have the 33 free throws made, 5th most in program history, first time since 2015 that either UCF or a UCF opponent has gotten over 100 points. CJ Kelly is right up there, the 12 free throws. That's the 10th. That's tied for 10th most in a single game in program history. Like, this was a history-making performance, gentlemen. I was talking with Kyle at Hula Bowl practice today, and I was thinking, and I told him, like, last year's team could never have done this in a similar situation. Now, to grant you, they had that Michigan performance, but that was in regulation. This was a double overtime marathon that had you foul out a couple of players after players that were already injured, and they still won. PJ Edwards, the hero, amazing 3-point shooting. The 3-point shooting kept them in this game, which was absolutely amazing. PJ Edwards going 2 for 5. You had heroes everywhere on this court. Well-coached game from Johnny Dawkins. I mean, this is an amazing basketball game to watch.
Yeah, it's going to go down, I think, as one of the. And by the way, I don't remember the last time, Eric. Maybe you've seen this on the in the media guide. Last time UCF had multiple overtime games in the same season.
Oh, well, yeah, I don't know about that. We could blame Kyle for this. He's missed 2 major games this year, and they both went double overtime. So I hope this Jaguar-Charger game was worth it, Kyle, because you missed one of the greatest basketball games ever played in that arena. I mean, I've been going to that arena since it opened. I mean, there was a triple overtime game about 15 years ago against Tulsa, which was very memorable. The Cincinnati game senior night, I'm going to give a shout out to Brian Murphy because he would scream because that's one of his favorite games. That was the moment where I think everybody felt You clinch that berth for the NCAA tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Crowd storms the court. Johnny talks to everybody. Obviously, Jeff, you and I were at the Illinois quarterfinal game. That's a significant historical moment game there as well. And then I got to think to the Houston game and game day in 2019 when they won in Houston. Those are some of the
that was in Houston. So
those are more significant wins. But as far as pure entertainment, drama, emotion, storyline, that game is hard to beat considering how shorthanded UCF was, what this game could mean for the rest of this year as far as the postseason. And I think, and I wrote about this on blackandgoldbanneret.com. Bing! Thank you. You mentioned the crowd. It was a great crowd, and Memphis can scoff all they want. And, look, they'll enjoy drawing big crowds for North Texas next year.
Speaking of salt, ooh.
The crowd, I thought, made a big impact in the game. And the players talked
about it.
See, you're
kosher.
Yeah. But the players made a big impact. I think the players fed off the crowd. And they're going to need that, I think, for the Houston game in a couple of weeks and for the rest of it. But more importantly, I said, it's incredible as crazy as Wednesday night was. In the Big 12, that's just a routine Wednesday night. And I'm not And so this program to have a chance to compete and be successful in the Big 12 in basketball, they're going to need that support from the students, from the community, and from those UCF fans that, like to chat, think they say they're basketball people, but they haven't been to the arena in forever.
Name names, Eric. Come on.
I'm just saying. I mean, Kyle Messi double overtime. Anyway, no, I'm just kidding, Kyle.
Hey, listen, something's got to pay the bills, Eric. You know that life.
I know that life too well. But no, look, that's the atmosphere you're going to need when you move on to the Big 12. And I think also, look, they've got the right coach to go to the Big 12, so we need to end that debate, if there was a debate. I don't think there was. Whatever. Johnny Dawkins knows what he's doing, and you guys mentioned it. Look at what he's done, and I wrote this on the banner. Ethiel Horton nailed it on the portal. Jalen Suggs, solid pick in the portal. CJ Kelly, right? People are like, CJ, boom, nailed it. Young, Baton Rouge Community College, what? Might be the most valuable player when you consider the injuries to Darius Johnson this year. Johnny Dawkins knows how to get guys in the portal.
And even though he didn't play last night, Michael Durr, he's been a hit.
Michael Durr's been solid hit too. And we'll see now, I think, as we'll get into with these injuries, I think we're going to see more of Toon coming up, Lamont Toon coming up moving forward. He's the other transfer.
Yep.
Oh, by the way, you know who recruited Taylor Hendricks, the greatest recruit ever in UCF basketball history? Oh, that's right. That was Johnny Dawkins. So he's the right guy for the league. And I am optimistic that UCF can compete in the league because they got the right coach. I think they'll get better players as they get into the league. The two big questions is, will they have enough fan support and will they have the resources to be seen? We don't know. But I thought that Wednesday night is a great step for the program in that regard.
I know that Eric lives in the house of negativity and skepticism, but you're talking about Tuesday nights in the Big 12. Have we already forgotten the scare they gave Houston, for goodness sakes? None of us had that game being that close. Hell, they were up by what, 6 points?
They're up in the second half. Yeah. I think they look back at that game and they're like, we left that one on the table.
Well, but they're going to have their chance. They're going to have their chance in 2 weeks.
A, B, right. The way that Houston put out mocking tweets about them and got that scare. Folks, another night in the Big 12. This team looked more prepared for it than anything else we've seen.
I agree, Kyle. I agree.
And then Memphis happened.
I agree with you. I agree. No, I agree. Look, I'm not saying that UCF's going to be a major contender in the Big 12 right away. But remember, the thing about the Big 12, and we're seeing it this year, where it's going to stay this way, you can go 6-12 in the Big 12 and make the tournament easily. You can't do that in the American. And that's,
6-12.
I'm telling you, the way this league's going, the Big 12 is probably at a 7-8 bid league pace right now. I mean, it's
500 in the league.
No. 7-11 is going to get you in. They've gotten teams.
The fact that we're even having this argument displays the point greatly.
Right. Whereas in the American, you don't have that luxury. That's why that is the benefit. The
margin of error is small.
You have a bigger margin for error. And look, this team beat Oklahoma State, which is one of the other teams that could make the tournament there. So it's positive for UCF. I think hopefully the fans keep coming out. Could be a historic game in 2 weeks. UCF's never hosted a number one ranked team in basketball at home.
Well, let's talk about that because here's the concern that I have. All right. By the way, interestingly enough, look at the net rankings, Eric. UCF, by virtue of beating Memphis last night, jumped 2 spots from 37 to 35. Memphis, by virtue of losing the game, it actually helped them more. They jumped 3 spots from 57 to 54. But like you mentioned, number one, Houston. They're number one in the net. They're number one in the polls. They're coming in 2 weeks on the 25th. But there's still 2 games between now and then. The first one is with the team that UCF is tied within the conference standings. That's the Tulane Green Wave, who are 11-5 on the season, 4-1 in the conference. That game is going to be on the road in New Orleans. And here's the thing with that I get worried about is this game is in 2 days. It's on Saturday at 2 p.m. ESPN Plus. And you got to make sure after this double OT meat grinder that you just went through that is your already limited rotation rested enough for that game. And, I understand that, it's a road game and everything. And, I think you had mentioned to us earlier that if they lose the game, it's still a quad. I think you said it would be a quad two
game. Right now, this is a quad 2 game, which is significant. Right. I mean, on the road.
Which it does in the net. It doesn't hurt you quite as bad as if it was a quad 4 game. But, at the same time, you don't want to start, you don't want the win at Memphis to beat you down the road because you're constantly behind the sticks in terms of rest and making sure all your guys are 100% because it's a long conference season.
No, it is. And look, Tulane was a team that was a trendy sleeper pick before the year by basketball people. They had injuries in the non-conference that kind of cost them, but they've gotten healthier. They beat Memphis, as a matter of fact, most recently. Coach Hunter likes to push the ball. That's going to be a game of tempo like it was with Memphis. Not an easy game at all. I mean, I think Tulane could easily be a top 4 team in this league if they stay healthy. It's funny, these 2 teams just want to be healthy. So trust me, Tulane doesn't want to hear about UCF's injury issues. They've had that issue. So it's a big challenge. We don't know, obviously, how, it's going to be, you lose a couple days. You're obviously not going to have Michael Durr, who's out for a while. Johnny Dawkins confirmed that. Injured, fractured his hand there in the SMU game. Darius
had
Johnson,
a wrap on his hand out there. That was the...
Yeah. You already lost CJ Walker. Darius Johnson, word from the program. They hopeful maybe he could play Tulane, but I think more realistic, UCF after Tulane doesn't play again until the following Saturday against South Florida. So you maybe give him that extra week and get him 100% ready to go for the rest of the ride, the rest of the season there. So, I think those are a couple things to watch for in the Tulane game. Tempo is a key. But the big thing is, with Durr out, CJ Walker's out for the year. This team's a little thin now in the front court. It's going to be interesting how Coach Dawkins handles the front court, as I wrote about on Banneret. If you go big, you may have to depend on Toon to play more minutes. Maybe you play the youngsters, Tiago Silva.
Tierno Sila. Sila.
I'm going to see the Hispanic gets me in trouble there. Or if you go small, do you go with Tyam Freeman? Does PJ Edwards earn some more minutes? It's going to be interesting what that staff does.
Well, I think what you brought up was interesting because when Jalen Young fouled out, and I thought this was pretty key, they actually yanked Lahat Tune out of the game because he actually started at center.
Went small.
They went small. Ty was the largest guy out there.
Wow.
For most of the 2 overtimes.
Wow.
And they pulled it off. They were running with what is it? CJ, Ithiel, PJ, Ty, and I forget who else was out there for the bulk of it. But yeah, they went small and figured it out.
So what I'm hearing you tell me is Coach Johnny Dawkins was aware, listen, we're going to go small. I got 2 guys with fresher legs than dudes that have been out there for 30, 40
Well, he made Penny go small too, by the way.
Yeah. Suggs was the other guy.
But that's what maybe he went small too. True. Well, to that point too, it also goes with the leg freshness too. A big guy who's tired isn't going to run either. I hear you there, Eric. But yeah, listen, at the end of the day, I'm glad all the Dawkins haters have been silenced for now.
By the way, I think Tyam Freeman, the last 2 games, going back to SMU and this game, he's kind of found some things here, and I think he's one that benefits from that small lineup. And when UCF goes fast and the open court, like Memphis game was kind of his type of game. He could be the wild card here if UCF decides to go small moving forward in some of these matchups.
He was really key, I thought. And even though it didn't show that much in the scoring, he contributed in two key ways. Number one, he was rebounding the hell out of the ball and throwing his body around. And then I think the other thing, this is something that I think is really unique for him. For a guy who's really a true three, he can handle the ball really well. He was key in breaking Memphis's press that they were trying to run.
Free throws too late in that overtime.
Had that 3-point play.
A great 3-point play. Made a couple big free throws. I mean, he's a great athletic guy. He hasn't played to the level that we, from last year. But remember, he was coming back from an injury. He's a guy to watch. I think for this team to continue to have success moving forward, I think Ty Freeman's going to be the key guy here off the bench. Yeah,
it's going to be fun, man. We had everything in that game. We had a 5-minute delay because of a scoring error. That was.
Mark Daniels was ready to fight someone.
I'll tell you something. I was, that Simpsons meme with what's his name? He's in the bus and he's like, "I'm in danger."
Yeah,
that was me at the scores table. Because I was Ralphie in that game, man. Because the official scorer sits right next to me. And I saw where like the confusion was happening, and I was like, it turns out like, so here's the thing that everybody needs to know: the official scorer is basically unofficial, right? That's why he wears the official shirt. You could have a 10,000 seat arena full of everyone keeping score of exactly the right way, all right? And they could all say it was 102 to 100. You could have the whole arena, everybody saying we have 102 points. If that book says you have 101, you have 101. That book is the law. And we did, and it took us a minute. It took everybody a minute. They were actually looking back through the law. And here's one of those things where it's like, it was kind of Murphy's law. And there's a corollary to Murphy's law that says that, whatever can go wrong will go wrong. And the corollary to it, I forget what it's called, but it's like, and it will do so at the worst possible time. Right. And so it happens in the double OT in a 1-possession game. And also going back to the beginning, there was no live stats.
Oh, I'm aware.
For the whole game, because the computer crapped out right at tip. So you have the official score. Now the live stats are unofficial, but I sit in between those two guys, and we see, they always double check with each other, right? Just to make sure that what's up on the web is what's correct in the official scorebook. But they couldn't do that because the electronic score system was down. So everyone was running around trying to figure out what it was. But finally, it was, believe it or not, it was Ty's 3-point play. That was where the point was missing. It was the free throw after that, but we figured it out. All's well that ends well. I tell you the truth, man. It was an entertaining few minutes. I don't know about the folks on TV who were probably "Oh my gosh!" It was a pretty entertaining few minutes down there. Let me tell you. But we figured it out. We got it right.
I kind of overheard it. I was listening on the radio, which was entertaining on the radio broadcast. I'm actually, folks. We're hoping to have Taylor Young for the site some point this weekend. He's traveling. I'm going to ask him about that if we have him, because that was a story in itself. That was entertaining. And full disclosure, you're right. You didn't have no stats. I DM Bryson during. I'm like, dude, you need to grab a final box if you get one and take a photo and send it to me so I can write my recap. And he's like, well, I mean, the so-and-so site has it. I'm like, I'm looking at the site. I'm like, no, they don't. They don't have all the details that I needed.
But the whole electronic scoring system went down. ESPN's feed was down.
Right.
All they could display was the score.
Yes.
The score and the time. They didn't have any numbers.
And it's what's funny is
it was rough.
Listen to the radio because Mark, for those who don't know, and he's professional, keeps his own book.
Yes. Yep.
Which is a very old school tradition. Credit to
him. If you're young broadcasters out there, keep your own score because We learned because we never had electronic monitors in the old arena, so we did it ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And so I listened to him because I knew that was I knew he had that because he's told me that. I've seen him. He's shown me the book.
Yep.
So I actually tuned into the audio because I knew he was going to give me stats. Because once, it was verified, I confirmed the stat tracker issues through Bryson and company that were at the game. I'm like, all right, I need to get some details so I can help figure out in my head how am I going to write this. Little did I know that would go into double overtime and I would be writing till 2 a.m. But hey, there you go. We won though. It's all.
It was hey, look. Bottom line is we got it right. We got it right.
Jeff, I will say this: when we were up there, when you said near the end of the first overtime period, because I remember this specifically, you said first overtime, like there are X minutes left. When first overtime was over. You jinxed it, Jeff. Jinxed it.
By the way, that's the second time that's happened this year. And Alex Cesarano, who's in charge of in-game experience for UCF, he's like, Jeff, don't do it. Don't say first overtime. Just say overtime. And I asked him after the actual game. I said, I'm not trolling, man. I'm just curious why. He's like, you're 100% accurate. There's nothing wrong with that, but don't jinx it. I was like,
but
right,
you're killing me, Smalls.
but then I said it. I said it with 1 minute to go because I always give the 1 minute warning. 1 minute to go in the first overtime because, there's a non-zero chance you can go to another overtime. And I'm trying to get it right first. That's my first job. And the second I said it, I was like, oh, man, I'm going to hear from Alex. I know where this is going. And Jeremy Panagos, who runs the game, who sits to my right, he tapped me on the shoulder. He's like, you did it again. I was like, oh, my God. So I accept full responsibility.
That's a pretty intense, stressful night in the table there by everybody. Holy.
It's stressful for some. For me, it was a blast. Oh my God, it was incredible. What a game!
Oh,
holy smokes!
Up there, Nick and I going back and forth with each other, going insane. Like we were like because he had class to get to the next day, and for me, I had hula bowl, and so we were like, this game is still going, but it's also a great.
It's a 3-hour game, 2 hours and 2 hours and 47 minutes. But I tell you, it was worth it. So, Tulane on Saturday. That's going to be, let's see if they can recover. Fortunately, the road trip's not all that long. I mean, it's not like we're going out to Tulsa or Wichita. USF the week after that, and then number 1 Houston in the 25th. Assuming that all continues to go as it will be, Houston would be.
Oh, you'll be back for
at least number 1 in the net, right?
Yeah, no. The plan is that I'll be there for Houston, right?
All right, so no double overtime that night.
Yeah. All right. So that'll be big. We got to talk about the women real quick, who had a decidedly less entertaining time with their last game. They did play Houston. And UCF's old assistant, Ron Huey, at Houston, but the Knights have now lost 3 in a row in conference and lost 80-42 on Tuesday to Houston after they lost by 5 to Tulsa at home in a tight game. But I don't know what happened here, but they fell down early, and it was just a stampede of turnovers for this game. The UCF turned the ball over in a 40-minute game 38 times. And, you can out-rebound Houston, which they did, by the way, by 9, 46-37, all you want. But if you turn the ball over 38 times, you are going to lose. And that's what happens. Here's where it gets interesting. And Elo, I want to get your take on this first. All right, you're Satia Messer. You're 9-6. Got off to a pretty good start. 3-game losing streak in non-conference. Won 3 in a row. To going into conference play, but now you're 0-3 in the American. You lost 3 in a row. You coming off a game like that. Are you throwing that game out, or are you saying, look, we need to get back to basics here before they play Wichita State at home on Sunday at 1 p.m.?
All of the above. All of the above.
Well, you got to choose one, man. You
only have so much time.
I would do all of the above, and I would also start thinking, who is the guy that has that great tie that covers us? Because we win games when he's in the building. I don't know. Get him back here. No, look. The thing that I would throw it out. I mean, it's one of those things, but I do think they got to work on a lot of things. I thought there was a lot of careless turnovers. I think they panicked once they fell behind. They started just chucking the ball, not really moving the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And look, they're going to have to understand this. Teams are right now gunning for them. Like the Houston player, they interviewed a Houston player after that game, and they said, I hadn't beaten UCF since I've been here. Every team now wants to get
they got the crosshairs on their back right now.
They want to get UCF back for the last handful of years. Because UCF, let's be real, the past years, UCF has had their way in the league for the most part, except for like USF and maybe in one other team or whatever. But they usually win, and they've won with a swagger. And now teams are trying to get back at them. So you come back home against Wichita State on Sunday. That's the good news. Just get that first win in the conference, and maybe everybody can kind of exhale. But Kyle, we've talked about the depth of this team. They don't have depth inside. And teams are starting to try to exploit some of their youthness, especially in the backcourt. And Houston did that very well by turning them over as many times as they did. 38 turnovers turned into 47 Houston points.
Right. And well, I'll say this. You talk about the lack of depth. It's not in the front court anymore. Listen, Nate Hutton and Desto are a thing. Taylor Gibson may be a raw player, but she comes in and handles business.
Yeah. And that's, by the way, forgive me, Kyle, but real quick, to your point, UCF is 11th in the country in rebounds per game and 7th in the country in offensive rebounds per game. So you're absolutely right about the front court.
Right. Yeah. And then Rachel Ranke comes in and does some stuff. She's a guard, but I don't know why, other than the fact that she has an ability to get super hot shooting, which she's done twice in 2 of their wins. But that's the problem with the guards right now. You're relying on Ranke, who is streaky, and not to say that makes her a bad player, but some games she's there from beyond the arc and some she's not. And you're relying on somebody who is a backup this time last year in Layla Jewett, and you're relying on a true freshman in Sierra Godbold. By the way, not to take away from Brianna Hardy if we're talking about that front court. See, this is why I had to correct you on the front court depth, Eric. I forgot somebody who matters in Brianna Hardy as a freshman who has gotten starting time, by the way, while Nate Hutton was out with injury. But yeah, the guards, listen, this group's been exposed. It is what it is. And they all had a bad night at the same time against a team, as you informed me, Eric, that attacks with the press. It was, I think.
Full court, they like to put pressure on the guards, yeah.
Right, exactly. So I think this was an element of a perfect storm game, and you got the disaster that sinks George Clooney's boat, no question. And I think if you're going to concentrate on anything in practice, it is breaking the press.
George Clooney. Where'd you get George Clooney from?
The perfect storm. Movie, dog.
I'm an Ocean's 11.
Murph leaves and no one knows anything about movies.
That's true.
Don't you dare say no one, sir.
That's true.
So,
by the way, first time UCF has started 0-3 in the American since the last coach's first year.
Coach Abe's first year, yeah.
Things did work out at the long run there. So, 0-3. That was the last time they started 0-3 in the league. Hopefully they don't start 0-4 against Wichita. Kyle, I'm starting to worry. I gave you all the credit for last year's conference championship. I'm starting to worry that maybe you weren't the reason they won the league. I'm just worried.
Man, I'm sorry to disappoint you, Elo. Well, hey, in my defense, according to you, I haven't been there enough. So,
that's true. You don't have a full picture yet.
If these the bowl committees need to get with Coach Messer and do a better job scheduling next year. That's what it is.
Well, like Eric, like you were saying, I mean, this is a big home back-to-back that they're going to need in order to figure this out quick, because they have Wichita, like you mentioned, and then 2 days, and then 2 days off on the schedule, and they have Tulane at home. So what are you going to do? I mean, is this the time that they can figure something out, move forward, or right? Does the injuries and the depth, really cause a problem?
Get that first conference win and everybody can exhale, because what happens is if you lose again, now it's just like an anchor, it's this thing in your back and it just carries and carries. Tulane's very good, by the way. They nearly beat LSU earlier this year. That will not be an easy game either. So I'm telling you, none of these will be.
Yeah.
So what?
You better bet they're licking their chops. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Everybody is. That's the thing. Everybody smells blood.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on that one for you as well. But, the women at home, listen, they're going to need some fan support too. I would love to see a crowd just like the men's team come for a women's game, because that can make a huge difference, especially for them, and hey, you just never know. All right. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little football. We have not touched yet upon Darin Hinshaw being named the offensive coordinator at UCF. What does that mean for UCF's offense, and more specifically, what it means for Gus Malzahn? That and more when we return. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, Kyle Nash, Bryson Turner with you here. Coming up this weekend, if you're heading down to Disney, make your way over to the Wide World of Sports, because the UCF cheerleading team is going for the UCA National Championship once again. They are 3-time champions, national champions, and they're going for it again this weekend. The semis are on Saturday. The finals are on Sunday. And by the way, Night Moves, the dance team, is also going for it. And they've had some, by the way, both teams have been previewing their national routines and have been hitting very solid coming in. So, Linda Gooch looking to, newly minted UCF Hall of Famer, Linda Gooch, looking to hang another banner for her program. So we'll see. They never televise it live. They televise it delayed, but you follow on Twitter and you know what's going on. So best of luck to Coach Gooch, to everyone at the UCF cheer and dance team coming forward. VarsityTV.com, Bryson Turner informs me, is where everyone will be seeing that. But they do the tape delay television on ESPN. But sometimes it's like a month later, right? It's quite out there. But of course, you go there live if you want. All right, let's talk about the people who our national championship, hopefully cheerleading team, cheers on quite a bit. That's UCF football. Big staff news that we didn't have the chance to talk about because we were all kind of everywhere for the holidays, and plus I was sick. Darin Hinshaw is the new offensive coordinator for your UCF Knights. If his name sounds familiar, it should. He played quarterback here for 4 years, from 1991 to 1994. Bryson and I talked with former UCF head coach Mike Kruzek around the holidays. He talked briefly about Darin Hinshaw. We have a full breakdown of it on the site, including the bit from Coach Kruzek. But Darin has bounced around a lot. He was at Cincinnati. He was in Middle Tennessee a long time ago. He spent a while at Kentucky and also at Tennessee. Was most recently the offensive coordinator and play caller at UAB this past season, and that was the year after he was at UCF as a defensive analyst. He said in his press conference, working with the defensive staff. It's interesting for an offensive coach working with the defensive staff, but I think that was actually quite helpful because he actually worked close with T-Will and also UCF's new defensive coordinator, Addison Williams. All right. So Hinshaw comes back. He is the offensive coordinator at UCF at his alma mater. It's actually his fourth stint at UCF. He was a quarterback coach under Kruzek. Of course, he was a player before that. And then the analyst bit. And now this is his fourth stint at his alma mater. But this is by far the most responsibility he's had since he was the quarterback actually out there on the field. He said it was his dream job. And yeah, you can certainly believe it. And Coach Malzahn was quite clear, Eric Lopez, about the fact that that he was, he wanted a guy who could develop quarterbacks and push the ball a little bit more vertically down the field. And this falls in, and the hiring of Hinshaw certainly falls in line with that. Although if you look at the numbers of the teams that he's coached, they've certainly been a lot more rush heavy, especially at Kentucky. But Hinshaw has a very diverse offensive background as well. And in addition to that, here's the thing. Darin Hinshaw is going to call the plays now. And that's a big change. Coach Malzahn said about midway through the year, he decided that, calling plays is just going to be too much. He wanted to offload some of that and focus more on some of the more CEO type issues that and tasks at UCF. And so it was difficult for Gus to do that, but he decided to hand it off. I mean, he's been calling plays ever since he was a high school coach at Arkansas. And now Hinshaw is going to do it. So your reaction to the hire, what's it mean?
I think it's great. Credit to all sides for making it, for Gus to, saying, you know what? I got too much on my plate. In today's college football world, it's crazy with all the portal stuff and everything you're going to follow. And you bring in a guy in Darin Hinshaw. I mean, you mentioned it. The two issues that I think you could say from a UCF offensive standpoint, not enough vertical passing game. Well, Darin Hinshaw knows all about that. You and Bryson spoke to Mike Kruzek, his old coach, his old coordinator, who knew a thing or two about vertical passing game. So I'm excited about that. Developing quarterbacks. I definitely think Darin Hinshaw is needed for that. I personally don't believe the quarterbacks were really that developed well last year. I think that'll be fixed now. I also like the fact Darin Hinshaw is not a guy that has an ego. And he said in the press conference, I'm okay working with people and ideas. So while he will call plays, let's not make any bones about it. This will still be Gus Malzahn's offense. He may not call the plays, but they're not going to all of a sudden run a completely different offense than they've been running. Now,
we're not going back. We're not going back to the air raid anytime soon, is what
right? But I like that, and remember, he was with Gus's staff, a couple years ago, and I think that made an impression on Gus. I like the fact that it's an alum. I think that will. I can tell you, it's generate a lot of excitement from maybe some of the older UCF fan base. Maybe not, and I do think one thing I've learned, because we have this hire and we have the baseball hire. One thing I've learned about these two hires, there is definitely a divide around the fan base. There is the older demographic that's been there for a long time that kind of appreciates guys like this. And then there's a few fans that, showed up in 2017 that think, we should be getting, names that we have no realistic Bryson. Anyway, what?
Oh boy, shots fired.
I hope if Hinshaw works out, I think, and we'll get to the baseball one later, I think this could unite those two fan bases combined. Because I do think there's a bit of a divide there as far as how they're thinking. When you've shown up 5-6 years ago, you think you should go undefeated every year. Whereas the older demographic, I think I like the hire a lot. Hinshaw's proven. He's coached in the SEC. So I'm a fan of this.
Kyle, what were your impressions?
I really think the issue for me, and yes, I'm saying issue. Listen, if I have to go to UCF historians to tell me what the chances of success that this individual could provide as a coach, we're already in trouble. The coaching resume and the coaching talent in the room, we don't exactly know yet, because there's a jump that needs to be made to the Power 5 and the Big 12 here. A conference that, albeit while they were completely waxed in the title game, was in fact in the title game. And then I hear the adorable sentiment of, we're going to go down the field more. Oh, that's adorable. Listen, I know a lot of people may want to see that, but at this time, the way this team is made up, there is going to have to be some heavy recruiting for that to happen. And we've had the conversations on this show about the beef and the turnover that's taken place, and the turnover that must happen to bring that line even back to where it was last year. And they had their share of struggles. At the end of the day, the running back room, despite the departure of Isaiah Bowser, who looks great at hula bowl practice, by the way, is going to be tough, but still palatable. The adjustment of the receivers is going to be relatively low, especially with transfers that have come in. But at the end of the day, you have a guy in John Rice Plumlee who's not known for his arm, but his legs. And right now, the cupboard is relatively bare of guys that are proven to have big arms at this level. So that is a big baffling question mark to me. I do enjoy the fact that Gus is talking about having somebody playing the calls and understanding that he's a fundraiser now. I do appreciate that sentiment. And listen, there have been guys who have gotten out of coaching that are Gus's age and that have left the craft because they have to be fundraisers and recruiters more than X's and O guys nowadays. But I'm not sure it's right to be completely out on these hirings, but by the same token, I'm not exactly sure what there is to be excited about. And really for the promises being delivered here, I need a lot more of substance on the how that's going to happen, which we don't have yet. We'll have to wait for the recruiting season to truly end, for spring practice to happen. You know, at the end of the day, there's a lot more we need to see and know, obviously, before we can make a definitive answer. But if fans are skeptical, I do not blame them.
Well, I mean, let me ask you this, though, and Eric, I want to get your input on this, too. Eric, you always said that you're a big fan of balance, right? Hinshaw at UAB last year, all right? And let's throw the Kentucky timeout, because it was, it was weird with Mark Stoops, but last year, UAB set the following school records: total yards in a game, over close to 5,700. They averaged 438 yards per game, but set a new school record with 3,000 total rush yards. They averaged 235 on the ground per game and 200 through the air. All right. Again, it was still a run-heavy offense there, and he's going to be coaching what is, at least right now, being built as a run-heavy offense now. Now, my question for both of you guys is that because it's built that way and this is what Gus wants to do, or is that because of a number of other factors? For example, the defense did not force a lot of turnovers last year. Gus likes to take shots right after turnovers, right? He wants to get those extra possessions and put you up against the wall. And the other thing was, in the second half of the year, when we had all those road games, I mean, let's take Gus at his word here. Maybe it did kind of get a little overwhelming. And when you're in that mode, you keep going back to what you're comfortable with, because that's what works for you. And maybe Hinshaw's that new set of eyes out there that can see some things that maybe Gus just, his peripheral vision was kind of he was having trouble.
You can never have enough eyes.
Yeah, I mean, it's and just somebody else who just looks at it from a different perspective, right?
And let me defend Darin here and kind of object to Kyle's there. He's talking about recruiting.
Consternation. Give me more. Go.
Well, Drew's not here, so I mean, somebody has to pick up the slack. Look. Yes, recruiting's a big factor. All of that, what you said, is true, Kyle. I laugh how people are dismissing him like at Kentucky, like somehow like he helped turn around that program.
Sure.
The reason they were not a juggernaut on offense is because who Jeff said the head coach was. It wasn't because Hinshaw was, head coaches, and people got to remember this. Coordinators, for the most part, do whatever the head coach wants them to do. Mark Stoops is a defensive guy. By the way, if you look at Kentucky's last bowl game, they scored as many points as Kyle did in the bowl game season this year. 0 against Iowa. So let's not act like Kentucky's flourished since he left. And I remember this, Jeff. This is it seems like a million years ago. You were on the radio when Kentucky started to rise. Remember they were getting kids in Florida? This was towards, we won't mention the stations or whatever. You were on the show.
And we can mention it for the old folks out there.
Was it Gary Cole with you on, or the station?
I mean, Gary Cole. Yeah. No. I was with you guys at 1080.
It was, but it was even before. Like, Kentucky was starting to get guys in Florida, and the big topic was, would it matter? They're a basketball school. Well, Darin Hinshaw was a big part of that turnaround. Kentucky, it wasn't, and that helped them get talent and players. I think Kentucky's capped, but people are dismissing. Like, people always like to look at numbers, but they don't look at the impact a guy can make in a program. And Kyle, he's recruited in the SEC. That's what I want. Did we not just see the Monday national title game? We saw an SEC team against the Big 12 team. Give me the SEC players. Give me any SEC guys you want. I think he could help them recruit, and I think he can help develop quarterbacks. I'm willing to – and I don't know who else you would want. People were saying Scott Frost. That was never going to happen.
That was never
People worked themselves into a work. Like, yes, were there certain prominent people that try to maybe, hey, maybe you guys should talk, and yeah, sure. It's kind of like when you have a divorced parents and the kid's like, hey, why don't you guys talk it out? And they talk it out and they still, now we're good. We're doing, it's good. It was never going to happen. And I think people worked themselves up. I think he's a really good hire. I like the hire a lot. I really do. Look, he's got to prove it, though. To your point, Kyle, I get it. You got to prove it. But I don't know who people, I don't know what your answer is as far as who you want.
Well, I'll grant you this much. First of all, before you decide to throw Kentucky under the bus, losing to Iowa in a bowl game, you already have forgotten they beat Iowa last year in a bowl game right here in town, which I was at, sir. And before you accuse people of not looking at numbers, perhaps that's one you should look at. They had a 1,300-yard, near 1,400-yard rusher in that game in question. But please, let's throw Mark Stoops under the bus as he beats the oldest active coach in the damn sport. Who's pretty good.
Look at this, a Mark Stoops defender. I love this.
No, I'm just a defender of the SEC, and they were dominant there. By the way, this past year, if you're going to look at that, Mr. I don't want to look at numbers, can you look at their schedule a minute? Brutal. Okay.
So you're making my point that just that you did a good job, part of that staff there when they were winning bowl games, starting to win bowl games. He was there for the beginning.
There was nothing he could have done on the staff this year against that schedule. Making that argument completely asinine. Right. So here's where we're at. I love all these accolades you're telling me about other places, but you're really going to walk the SEC in here and tell me that this line here at UCF become a fraction of anything he had? Sir, I'm glad we don't have an HR department. You'd be tested for drugs.
That's my call. That's my call, by the way.
Who do you want? But who would you have wanted, Kyle? That's the part I don't like.
And see, now that is your best defense. And here's where I'm at. For all we've been told by coaches, Elo, about how much better recruiting and reputation have gotten, moving to the Power Five, this is the best you had on the short list. Now, what I think happened, to your point, I'm not sure that Gus was as prepared for Chip Lindsey to leave as he was with T. Will. And everybody, listen, we all know when Gus hired T. Will to be part of his staff as his defensive coordinator, that he was going to be an up-and-comer. When they did what they did earlier in the season and the buzz started, we knew it would happen even sooner. And when the defense trailed off, we were kind of fooled for a minute that it wouldn't, and it still did anyway. But the punchline's this. From moment one, we knew that T. Will was going to be a rising star. The guy that used to be at Troy wasn't really sure he was going to move, and then he did. So I think there's an element of surprise there. Also, perhaps the next person on the list that he was looking for, maybe he got a couple no's on the way. I don't know about that either. The process took a little longer than we thought it would, and maybe it's because some Zoom calls just didn't go the way that Gus would have wanted them to. So I think the biggest problem I have is you're coming out here promising down the field when you ain't got the personnel for it. And Kyle, how is he going to try to promise that? It makes me question.
Kyle, hold on. I think you're kind of reacting to his comments. You've done many of these press conferences, NFL, college. What do you want him to say? Hey guys, we're not going to throw it downfield. We're going to just run. That's what everybody says.
You could use nebulous terms on trying to build up the offense by using words such as explosive, creative, innovative. You specifically marked a tactic in your speech, and I've been in enough press conferences to know other coaches that know better than to make that mistake.
Well, hold on. Let me stop you on that, and then I want to go to Bryson because he has a point, and he said Eric called him out, and he wants to call Eric back out. So, what Gus did say was, I needed a guy with some fresh new ideas, and I found him in Darin Hinshaw. Is that not what you're talking about right there?
Great. Have some fresh new ideas, but don't promise down the field. You can't deliver on it today. You can be fresh in how you do run games. Look at Sean McVay in the NFL. Granted, I'm too good to do a rebuild, so I might leave. But that's a different show for a different podcast. I get that. But you could be innovative with the run game. Kyle Shanahan in the NFL, Sean McVay in the NFL. Find me an SEC coach that doesn't do innovative-ish with the run. Kirby Smart called. He said Bennett doesn't do everything for that offense, okay? Listen, there's there. You don't promise down the field to this fan base because they're going to want it.
Yeah. All right. Well, Bryson, come in and sort this out, please.
Okay. So first of all, Eric, I was.
Oh boy, here he comes.
I was born. Darin Hinshaw was the quarterback coach at UCF, 2000. All right, I want to make that clear real quick.
Thanks for making us feel old again. All right.
No. He wasn't the quarterback.
I keep you guys in check. Is what I do.
No, he's a quarterback coach.
Yes.
That's what Bryson said.
As someone that come into this around that time, One thing that I remember that I saw a lot of people want is they want to see UCF people come back. That is one thing that I've seen a lot of people wanted Mackenzie Milton to be a coach on this staff. That's one thing I've noticed is that people want UCF coaches to come back to their alma mater. They want people that are invested in this program. Why do you think they were annoyed about when Scott Frost and Josh Heupel left? It's because they just jetted to the next Power 5 job they can get. With so far with Gus and then with Hinshaw, because of his history, you have people that are invested in the success of this program. And then as far as the change goes, I mean, you mentioned the down the field stuff. That I think that could be the kind of kick in the teeth or refreshment that this offense needed. John Rice Plumlee, like you said, isn't really known for throwing down the field. So will the quarterback competition open back up with Tommy Castellanos? I think that Hinshaw will be able to make those changes with the play calls, and we could see a UCF offense next season that has the Gus flavorings, because as we all know, Gus is amazing with creativity on the offense. But from a more play-to-play perspective, we have a change on that offense that can make it a better one than it was last season.
Well, let me put it to, and real quick, to Eric and Kyle here, just kind of rapid fire. All right. So one other thing that Hinshaw said that, Bryson, you mentioned, he said that it's that basically the door's open at the quarterback spot. He wants competition. So let's put you guys on the record right now on this 12th day of January 2023. Who's going to be the starter for that opening game? Do you think right now? Will it be John Rice Plumlee? Could we see Tommy Castellanos finally get the ball? Could it be Timmy McClain? Where are you thinking right now? Eric, we'll start with you.
I'll stick with Plumlee. And by the way, real quick on the Bryson point about Mackenzie Milton wanting to be a coach. Darin Hinshaw was Mackenzie Milton of UCF in the 90s. That's the irony of that. We actually did that. So, but I'm gonna go Plumlee. But
Dante Culpepper played in the 90s too, Eric.
Well, I'm saying pre-call. Before Culpepper, I'm saying this guy was really good. Like, I think you could argue he's the fifth.
Yeah, he was the school's all-time leading passer until Dante showed up.
Yeah, I think it's exciting. We got a UCF guy. That's a great point, Bryson. Let's all root for the guy. I'm gonna go Plumlee there, but just start because he is the more experienced one.
Kyle,
I don't think he's in the building yet.
Ooh. Man, Kyle's bringing it to the segment here.
Man, Kyle, either that or he's in a mood. Did he steal the bad mood from you, Eric? What is going on here?
After talking about, women's basketball in that situation, that's.
I see. He's mad.
Oh, okay.
Kyle's just trying to go to be the next Eric Lopez.
It comes out. Okay.
I
like this. We're mixing it up today on the show. This is fantastic. All right. Well,
actually, it's Elo trying to talk SEC football and it not going well for him. I'll be all.
All right. Well,
take that.
Let me pull that non sequitur back here, and congratulations to the deputy minister of the non sequitur. Another guy who's a former UCF player, who's gone into coaching, who's invested in the program, also named an assistant coach. This time for UCF Baseball. And if you'd followed UCF in the majors, you know his name really well. Mike Maroth pitched for a number of years in the majors, was drafted actually out of UCF to go to the majors. He's, one of the great pitchers in UCF history, and now he is coming back and filling that pitching coach spot. And we'll take over, and we'll take over in that spot underneath Greg Lovelady. We interviewed Mike Maroth, Eric, several years ago. 2018. He spent a long time in his career developing pitchers, and probably his, magnum opus, if you will, was working with those young Braves pitchers who went on.
Yeah, we should ask the Braves fan in the room here, Mr. Bryson Turner.
Yeah,
all about that farm system.
By the way, it really tutored those guys on their path to becoming key cogs in the Braves pitching staff and the team that won the World Series. And I think that you could talk about, he's a familiar name, but I think similar to Hinshaw, Mike's got some clout behind him here, and I think he's going to bring some. Bring some really interesting new things to the pitching staff this year, when they get started here, which will be, in a few weeks.
It's a home run. I mean, well, I don't know if you can use a pitching hire and use the word.
Well, you don't want to use strikeout. Jesus.
But I don't know what you use. But it's a heck of a hire. Considering, for those
I'll allow home run hire. All
right. Very good. But it's a heck of a hire. Considering you're about a month before the season, your pitching coach, Nick Gotti, leaves to go to the minors. You're thinking, what is he going to do? And he brings Mike Maroth, who's regarded as one of the best minor league pitching coaches. I mean, when that news leaked by Kendall Rogers, D1 Baseball, there were baseball Braves fans and there were former players. They're like, man, I can't believe it. Like,
that's
Braves
a good get. Yeah.
Right. I mean, Bryson, you're a Braves guy. A lot of Braves fans were mad when this news came out.
Oh, yes, they were. Like, you got to understand the type of guy they're losing here. First of all, he's been the pitching coach for AAA Gwinnett for a few years now, but during his time with the Braves, he's worked with the likes of major league pitchers like Ian Anderson, Joey Wentz, Kyle Muller, Bryce Wilson, Bryce Elder, and the granddaddy of them all, the 2022 MLB wins leader, Kyle Wright. This is the type of guy. He worked with all those guys, and now he's going to be coming down to his alma mater. But one aspect of his job description that I think is very interesting is when he initially joined the Braves, because he started his coaching career with the Tigers organization. He first came to the Braves as a minor league rehab pitching coordinator in 2016, 2017. And I find this aspect interesting because what has been one issue that this UCF pitching staff has had over these past several seasons now, it's injured pitchers. Connor Stain, Colton Gordon. I mean, the injuries, and then of course Zach Bennett and Nick Vieira were both relief pitchers that were out last year with injury that I think arguably really hurt their bullpen. To have somebody that has worked with these minor league pitchers on rehabbing and effectively rehabbing is huge for a staff like this. And I would argue, by the way, that this should be called a knuckleball hire, because considering the timing that this has happened, this was a move that I think that was very...
This one broke late is what you're saying.
Exactly. So it's what... Exactly. Because
change.
Right. Exactly. It's a change. I think that they need it. And I think that it's a brilliant move. When you lose a pitching coach like Nick Oddie to the professional system in the minor leagues, you go to the minor leagues to bring your next guy in and for such a fast turnaround. So absolutely brilliant hire.
Yeah. Here's what I think is an interesting part about his resume here. In 2015, the Braves, he was with the Braves as their minor league rehab pitching coordinator.
Yeah, I just said. Yeah, I just said.
Yeah, like you said, and so like you said, all the injuries. Wow, I mean, this is a guy who knows how to prevent those injuries from recurring.
Hopefully, and again, it sounds like a broken record. When that hire was announced, man, there was a lot of baseball alums, UCF baseball people with. Honestly, some of them, not thrilled with Greg. Guess they haven't made the tournament in a few years. There was an overwhelming excitement about that. And there's just something about it, a former player, an alum, coming back that people are going to get behind, especially in sports like baseball. I think people are going to get behind Maroth. He's got the credibility. It's going to be interesting. He's only literally got a month to prepare to get to know these pitchers. I would assume Greg, who used to be a pitching coach himself, and obviously a catcher in Miami, was a pitching coach when he was at Wright State at one point. He'll help Mike kind of speed up on that. Mm-hmm. But I love that hire a lot. And whenever we do, we'll talk to Greg, obviously, as we get closer to season. Greg's been very involved with the alumni. He's helped bring a lot of them back, especially players from the Bergman era, with, and Mike Maroth being one of them. And I wonder if that maybe helped Greg in a tough situation like this, knowing, I know Mike Maroth. They probably have spoken. They probably know each other, alumni events, etc. He knows what Mike's been doing with the Braves. That might have been an easier hire than we think. We'll find out when we talk to him, but it's a great hire.
Yeah, I will say that of all the UCF sports, the one that I think might have the tightest alumni network is baseball. Yeah, in terms of who you can go to in a pinch to find someone to help out. Baseball has always remained tight. Always remained tight, even post Bergman. And
especially
I think that's
since
key.
Greg's arrival, since Greg.
Greg's been key in keeping that network intact.
And that's important. I know it's a theme throughout. We've mentioned it with the basketball fans, mentioned it with Hinshaw. You're going to the Big 12. You're going to need that support on in the stands, but you're also going to need it behind the scenes when you're going into the Big 12.
And you're going to need, and if you're going to win in the Big 12, you're going to need major league talent, and you're going to need somebody who knows how to coach major league talent. And that's exactly what Mike Maroth is. So congrats to Mike. Looking forward to seeing what he can do with the staff this year. UCF Baseball just a couple weeks away from getting ready to start. All right. We'll come back. We've got a few more things just to wrap up here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We have a UCF women's soccer player getting drafted in the NWSL. A couple other things to talk about as well. Stick around. We'll be back. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon here, along with Kyle Nash, Eric Lopez, and Bryson Turner. Just going to wrap things up here before we go. Guess what? It is track and field season. The indoor track and field season is getting underway this weekend. UCF heads to Gainesville for the Jimmy Carnes Invitational. So we will actually see the full range of the team out there, not just the cross country and distance runners as they get started on their season. By the way, their schedule this year, they have several invitationals up in Gainesville that they're going to go to. But again, you're going to the indoor season, which goes from January 13th as Jimmy Carnes Invitational at Gainesville until February 24th. So basically a month and a half long indoor season. NCAA indoor championships are in the beginning of March 10th through 11th. And then the outdoor season begins right after that. St. Patrick's Day, March 17th is the Black and Gold Invitational. And that's when UCF hosts some outdoor events to start that half of the track and field schedule. Coming up here at UCF, one more football game to start 2023, the Hula Bowl. 6 UCF Knights will be there. The game kicks off on Saturday at noon. Isaiah Bowser, Sam Jackson, Alex Ward, Kamari Gamble, Newt Wilson, and Anthony Montalvo will all play. And the Hula Bowl, which of course is traditionally the college all-star game that played in Hawaii, but UCF is hosting it while they work on Aloha Stadium out there, or at least the time being, and along with a number of other talented players. And Bryson, you were at the practices, and Kyle, you mentioned this before we came on the air. With college all-star games, the real meat and potatoes is the practices. That's when the NFL scouts show up. That's when not just the NFL scouts, but let's also give some love out to CFL is out there. We've had a number of players go to the CFL, the USFL, and the XFL.
Correct.
Okay. Don't forget them. All right. And we got a team here in town, the Orlando Guardians now, right, Kyle?
Yes, SID'd by former UCF SID Andy Seeley as well. Also, I saw shirts from the Rhine Fire, the European leagues kicking back up too.
That's right. And they bought the marks for the trademarks, I believe, for the old NFL Europe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they took it and
there's because I saw the Barcelona Dragons are back.
Yeah. They took the logos and made them a little fresher. Listen, you could have a whole uniform discussion with our own Andrew Glukov as he'll lose his mind. I think they tightened up the Rhine Fire logo at the very least.
Not on this particular show, thank heavens. No one wants to hear that. But but Bryson, what'd you see out there in those practices that kind of, and I think Kyle, you were out there too, right?
Yes.
What'd you guys see out there that kind of made you stand up and take notice? Kyle, go ahead. You first.
Well, from the UCF perspective, it's very interesting observing, some of the guys in play. Like, I remember, for me, the big thing when I walked in on Monday, Isaiah Bowser may not be the biggest back, but he moves like the smaller backs. And has more size than them, obviously, right? And the big part of it for him is going to be show off that versatility. You've heard me say a bazillion times on this podcast and on Night Shift on the Black and Gold Banneret YouTube channel as well. And just the versatility that's in place with not only him catching the pass and running the football, but pass blocking as well. And listen, in the NFL, one thing holds clear: no block, no rock, especially at the running back position. Sam Jack looks about as tight as he should in the trenches there. But for me, Anthony Montalvo coming in here, he was a late addition, came into practice, I think, for the first time today, as a matter of fact. and was in drills against a Notre Dame offensive lineman and stood him entirely up. It was a thing to behold if you're watching for UCF players.
That guy, we're going to miss him next year. He was a problem.
Yeah. But hey, listen, look at it this way. Expect a lot of hashtag built by UCF throughout the coming camps here with those guys. Do I think they'll make be involved in the draft necessarily? No, I don't know that they'll get drafted, but we'll be following them. And I think Bowser, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Bryson, but Bowser said I think he had 9 NFL teams contact him.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Well, my Giants are one of them. We could use a good backup to spell Saquon Barkley here and there, just in case.
Dolphins can use a running back. Period.
Actually, the Dolphins could use Isaiah.
We need him Sunday. Is he available Sunday? We could, anybody.
Well, it's actually very interesting because one thing that Bowser was talking about, he said he was actually going to train after the Hula Bowl. He's going to go train in Las Vegas, apparently, where his agent is. One other aspect about NFL is if you go back to our video on the Black and Gold Banneret YouTube channel, we talked to Alex Ward after the first practice on Monday, and it actually took him a while for him to get over to us because he had a pretty lengthy conversation with a scout from the Bucks, he said in that video. So and of course he talked about being invited to Combine as a long snapper, which is a pretty huge deal that he got invited for that. So there's a lot more people in the Hula Bowl this season after last year when it was just KZ and Cole, and they're all on the same team too, Team Ina, and it's very intriguing to see how many of them are in there. Anthony Montalvo just got added to the roster on Wednesday night. He had his first practice on Thursday, and just to be able to have this the impact, these different voices coach you and also meet you as well. The UCF players weren't specifically doing this, but I noticed that there were people that were handing out / trading team decals with each other. There was one UConn linebacker that had helmet decals from like App State in Virginia when he never ever played for them before. So it's a really interesting environment to be in. And I think it's a very, useful and enriching environment for these UCF players as they move on to the next phase of their football careers or audition.
Yeah, this is where the NFL draft season starts to ramp up. It's funny how early it happens now, right? Mid-January, but here we go. I mean, it's this is going to be fun to see. By the way, speaking of moving on to the next level, some news that dropped right before we actually started recording this podcast from the world of women's soccer. Kristen Scott, UCF women's soccer star, has been drafted, and she will be staying home with the Orlando Pride. She goes 41st overall. This is, what more can you possibly say? It's going to be great to see Kristen remaining at home. She was so instrumental for UCF really in her entire time here, 33 career goals, 6th all-time in program history. Eric, it's great. We love to keep the talent in-house or in the local area. She could possibly draw some people to the Pride as well. She's not the only UCF player who's played for them.
Mary Lawrence was with them,
right?
As well, so yeah.
And let's face it, she's she knows how to put the ball in the back of the net,
and that's something the Pride need, among others. So that might be a good fit. I think she'll have an opportunity there, and you're right. That's some good pub for that franchise, and I'm just happy for her. Obviously, had a monster year, had an injury during the season, and worked herself into playing here professionally, which was her goal. So,
by the way, that I thought that the time when she was out, Eric, that showed like exactly how instrumental she was to that team, because they were listless without her on offense. And when she came back, even if she didn't score a goal, her presence on the field, was instrumental in keeping UCF in games and getting UCF to where they got this year. Last point on that, Bryson.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think it's honestly, the irony of this is hilarious to me, because I remember talking to Kristen for my profile that I did on her for the Black and Gold Banneret.com during the season. Thank you, Kyle. And she mentioned how when she was initially going to college, she wanted to get out of here. She wanted to get out of Orlando. And now not only did she play for her hometown college team, but she's now playing for the local NWSL team. So the hometown hero that Kristen has really turned into is honestly amazing to witness. And after, her time at UCF women's soccer, where she is 6th all time in career goals and fifth all time in game winning goals, to see her stay at home is amazing to see.
Yeah. Edgewater High School graduate. And I think what says it all is, I don't know, I can't remember who put this into her bio, but when you look at her bio on UCF, underneath 50 year, it lists all these bullet points, all these records and awards and honors. And the very last one, good at soccer. And Kristen Scott is good at soccer.
And by the way, the family's got to be excited because her sister Kaylee's on the UCF team and might likely have a role next year in trying to replace her sister.
Gee, they're going to be back and forth between downtown and here quite a bit next year.
Sounds like
when
a
that
story
happens.
idea, Bryson. Sounds like a Bryson story idea.
Yeah, that very much does sound like a Bryson Turner special. Here's an Eric Lopez special. Speaking of players who are special, Jada Cody. We're going to wrap with this. D1softball.com called Eric Lopez, and they have UCF softball's Jada Cody ranked the number 14 best player in the nation. NFCA second team all region, AAC first team all conference after 2022. And we're approaching softball time, Eric, but this is, Jada's going to start getting some real attention, not just locally. We've already talked about that many times on this podcast and on our site, but nationally, people are going to take notice of Jada Cody now.
She's the face of the program. I mean, you look at this where we've been here. I've called it the golden era. McKenna Melville's been the face of volleyball. Renaya Jones currently the face of track and field. You could say Kristen Scott maybe was the face of women's soccer this past year, as you just mentioned. And Jade is the face of the program, which is unique because usually the face has been a pitcher, but other than Stephanie Best, maybe Natalie, but right now it's her, and she's tremendous. She plays all the positions, well deserved. She was honored as an All-American by D1 and Softball American last year, and is a player that transcends. I mean, I've had people come up to me and ask me about her. She's played this past fall with the U.S. national team, so she's going to be in their system for a while for the U.S. National team. So, I mean, it's a well-deserved ranking there, obviously, and real proud of her, and I know she's excited to even have a better year than her historic year last year.
We're now less than 1 month away, Eric.
Yeah! Let's go.
Black and Gold Classic,
go,
Georgia, February 9th.
Rematch of
the
last
Diamond.
year's. That's right.
The Duke of the Diamond is hype, boys.
You don't have to worry about a vertical game on the softball in there, Kyle.
There we go.
You don't go. But yeah, softball around the corner. Baseball, I mean, it's going to be getting really busy. Tennis gets going next week. Be on the lookout. YouTube channel, right, Bryson? We're going to have tennis previews next week. We had John Roddick. We recorded with him. We might air that on the pod where we talked movies. Speaking of, Jeff, you wanted movie content? We provided that with John Roddick.
I was going to say someone's going to have to fill in for Brian, all these years later.
Come on, I'm in the room. Dang it!
No, if I want something from you, it's going to be a good dad joke. It's going to have to be that,
By the way, salute to Kyle Nash.
Or a Bing.
A salute to Kyle, by the way. He will be covering the National Football League wildcard, the game of the weekend in the playoffs. It's not that nonsense in Tampa. That's definitely not the game in Buffalo. That's a scrimmage. No, he's going to be at the game of the week in Jacksonville for the LA Chargers against
2 quarterbacks with brilliant hair.
Fair. Absolutely.
Justin Herbert and Trevor Lawrence, two young quarterbacks with brilliant hair going at it. It's going to be a nonstop Pert Plus commercial.
And if it all goes well, granted he's suffered through injury, but if there's a playoff win in Jacksonville in Duval, Shaquille Griffin will once again be the member of a playoff winning franchise.
Yeah. And by the way, he's not the only UCF player who's going to be in the NFL playoffs getting things underway. By the way,
where can we find more details, Jeffrey?
We can find more details courtesy of our new member of Black and Gold Banneret, Nick Porcelli, who joined us this week. He's a UCF student, and he actually went through the NFL regular season and the excellent performances from UCF players, recapped all those, and he previewed the NFL playoffs. The UCF alumni will be in the NFL playoffs. Shaquille Griffin, obviously one of them. Of course, everyone looking forward to see what Gabe Davis does for the Buffalo Bills. We remember what he did the last time he was on the field for an NFL playoff game. He set a new NFL record with 4 touchdown catches in one game in that unreal thriller in Kansas City, even though he came out on the losing end of that one. It was really an amazing performance. So we'll see what he's able to do with Josh Allen, who I think will represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. That's just me, though. Well, maybe not me. Though not just me. Maybe a couple of you guys.
Actually, yeah, a lot of people do.
Actually, I am on record on the Student of the Game podcast agreeing with you, Jeff, just for the record.
Yeah.
By the way, as a side note, Gabe Davis also officially has currently the longest play of this NFL season.
Was it a vertical pass?
Which one was it?
I believe it was yards after the catch rather than a vertical pass, sir.
Okay, just checking.
Whatever, we'll take it. All right. And that'll take us to the end as we run after the catch right to the end of this show. Thanks to Kyle, the SOTG on Twitter. Thanks to Eric Lopez Elo. Thanks to Bryson. It's Bryson Turner. Follow our new guy, Nick Porcelli. He's at Nick Porcelli 2, the number 2, Nick Porcelli. Also, don't forget to follow Andrew Glukov, Stat Boy Drew. We got some amazing photos from our amazing photographers, especially from that thriller in Memphis. We'll be pumping those out on our Instagram channel, Instagram.com/Black and Gold Banneret. Follow us collectively on Twitter, UCF Banneret _SBN. Don't forget our YouTube channel. We can see all the latest interviews, especially from the Hula Bowl participants from UCF, YouTube.com/Black and Gold Banneret as well. What am I missing? Oh, yeah, Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret. We're everywhere on social media here on this platform, and we really appreciate you guys following us and listening to this podcast. If you like what you hear, please leave us a review on whatever platform your choice, Apple or Android. Make sure you tell your UCF friends about us as well, because we love to hear. Because look, there's a lot of content we're going to be talking about in the next year. This is the biggest year of UCF sports coming up. Eric, what do you think? Maybe ever moving to the Big 12?
Yeah, we still got a lot of stuff to go here in the next few months.
We're gonna have a lot of stuff. We're gonna have a lot of stuff to talk about over the summer. I was just thinking about, now that it's a new year, I was planning this out. We're gonna have to talk about a new conference in every sport. The NCAA Division I transformation committees and how that's going to recommendations, how that's going to affect UCF. One of them, by the way, Bryson, you were really thrilled about this one. The volunteer coach position and Eric, you too, for softball and baseball.
Softball and the other
no
sports,
more volunteer. They're adding a paid coach.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Full time,
Yeah.
starting July of 23. That's significant. Softball and baseball have a 4th assistant. This will impact also volleyball. This impacts a lot of the different sports. Is that why Drew's not here? Is Drew just getting ready to apply for these jobs? Is that why he's not with us? Is that
hopefully not, but
or is he, all right. But no, that's big. That's a big significant news in the coaching. That's going to really make this off season and all these sports like baseball and softball really significant, because now you have an extra assistant to play with. So that's big news.
Among everything else, as we head into now less than 6 months away from July 1st, when UCF moves to the Big 12 Conference, we will cover every angle of it for you right here on the Black and Gold Banneret. For all of us here, I'm Jeff Sharon saying thank you so much for listening. Enjoy this weekend. Enjoy the basketball. Enjoy the NFL playoffs. Go Knights, charge on. See you next week.